too long.
Somebody's hurting my brother,
And it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore.
Somebody's hurting my sister,
And it's gone on far too long.
yes, it's gone on
Far too long.
It's gone on
Far too long.
Somebody's hurting my sister,
And it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore.
Talk about the song a little?
Sure. Hey everybody, I'm Joe. This is my friend Bevan. You didn't know probably when you walked in that we were going to start with some songs and there's going to be a little bit of singing. It will be participatory. We're going to actually teach you some songs. But this song, Somebody's Hurting My Brother, is a core song of the Poor People's Campaign. It was born in North Carolina after a devastating coal ash spill. And on its creation, one of our main song leaders in the national campaign, Yara Allen, she said the following. Before Reverend Dr. William Barber, one of the national co-chairs of the Poor People's Campaign, before he closed the town hall with a prayer, he asked me to sing. The only thing I could hear was, somebody's hurting our brother. We won't be silent. And then it was my time to walk up there, and I went with a blank slate, except for those few words. I asked the audience to sing along with me. I paused for just a moment and relied on what my faith tradition had taught me, which was to lean into the Spirit in that moment and just be guided. And she started singing, and that song came out. And as I looked over at the young boy who had testified, a 14-year-old boy who was in remission for cancer from this coal ash, the verse, somebody's hurting our children, poured out, followed by somebody's poisoning the water. And so that was how that song came about. And now people all over the country who are getting involved in organizing spaces, sharing stories, they sing this song as well. So it's a little bit of a call and response. I don't know if you want to explain that part. Or
Sure. So the first line is, somebody's hurting my brother, and your response is, it's gone on far too long. And then we say, it's gone on far too long. And then we say, somebody's been hurting my brother, and the response is, it's gone on far too long, and then we won't be silent anymore.
Cool. We'll sing a few verses of this, all right? Folks, if you are comfortable, I invite you to stand. We'll do a little, I'm going to be snapping up here because I can't clap, but for those of you who feel comfortable clapping and want to keep a rhythm going, that would be really cool too.
Right from the top?
Right from the top.
Somebody's hurting my brother,
And it's gone on far too long.
yes, it's gone on
Far too long.
It's gone on
Far too long.
Somebody's
Hurting my brother. And it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. Did you hear? Somebody's hurting my sister, and it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. Tell you it's gone on far too long. Somebody's hurting my sister, and it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore.
Somebody's been hurting our children,
And it's gone on far too long.
yes, it's gone on
Far too long.
It's gone on far too long. Somebody's been hurting our children, and it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore.
Did you hear? Somebody's hurting poor people,
And it's gone on far too long. Yes, It's gone on far too long.
I tell you it's
gone on far too long.
Somebody's hurting poor people, and it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. That last line one more time. And we won't be silent anymore. Right on, right on. We're gonna do one more. You can sit. It's cool. Yeah, we'll do one more. Let's do Set It Right again. This is one from a friend down in Kingston, Ms. Ana Hernandez, that she wrote based on a contentious speech, a contested speech by Sojourner Truth from the 1851 Women's Rights Convention in Akron, Ohio. And I actually didn't look up exactly which version of this speech it came from. The reason I say this is a contested speech is that you might know we live in the United States, and there's a whole lot of racism in our country, unfortunately. And Sojourner Truth, speaking for women's rights, speaking for rights for her people, was a black woman. Her voice was not trusted to be a representative, to actually reflect the truth of her own experience. And so someone took her speech and rewrote it, more or less, so that it could be published far and wide. And that speech was circulated tremendously. But it turns out that speech was modified quite a bit from what she actually said. And her original speech is quite powerful as well. I did not double check to see exactly which version of the speech it's from. Nonetheless, this song, Set It Right Again, is drawn from either Sojourner Truth's words or some apocryphal, possibly her words. But it is also a little bit of a call and response. So I'll sing, "There's a great trouble in the land," and you'll say, "We're gonna set it right again." And then we'll go back and forth a few times, and then I'll cue you. We'll repeat. Set it right again. Very easy. I promise you'll pick it up real quick. Right on, right on. There's a great trouble in the land. We're gonna set it right again. There's a great trouble in the land. We're gonna set it right again. There's a great trouble in the land. We're gonna set it right again. We're gonna set it right again. Not bad. Here we go. Trouble been brewing too many years. We're gonna set it right again. Trouble been brewing too many years. We're gonna set it right again. Trouble been brewing too many years. We're gonna set it right again. We're gonna set it right again. We need clean water and healthy food. We're gonna set it right again. We need clean water and healthy food. We're gonna set it right again. We need clean water and healthy food. We're gonna set it right again. We're gonna set it right again. One more verse. Here we go. We need justice across the land.
We're gonna set it right again. We need justice across the land. We're gonna set it right again. We need justice across this land. We're gonna set it right again. We're gonna set it right again.
Give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you very much for singing with me. Thank you, Bevan. You're going to want to remember that one. We're going to come back to that one in just a little bit. Welcome to the first, possibly not the last, Food and Poverty Speak Out here in Schenectady / Rotterdam. We're in the Rotterdam Community Center. Our address is technically in Schenectady. The line is like right there. It's that road. But thank you for coming here. Today is actually an important holiday, but you probably didn't have the day off of work. Today is May Day, also known as International Workers' Day. And it is a day rooted in the struggle of poor and working class people all around the world. And in the U.S., we tend to have some institutional bias against poor and working class people, and that's why May Day is not an official holiday in the U.S. That's why we instituted Labor Day, and we separated that out to be much later in the year from when the rest of the world celebrates and uplifts poor and working class people and the struggles that we participate in. Now we're here to share stories. If you got a flyer, if that's partly what drew you here, there's a saying at the top of that flyer that says, "Movements begin with the telling of untold stories." Movements begin with the telling of untold stories. So we're going to hear some of those stories tonight. But here's the thing. You don't need us to tell you that things ain't going great in our world, in our society, in our community. Right? You don't need to hear more stories to understand exactly how messed up things are. However, because we live in that society, like I said, that is a little bit biased, a lot of bit biased against poor and working class people, you could watch the news all day, every day, and you would actually know less about the problems that we're facing. We actually have news that makes us dumber about the crises and the problems that we're facing. And so what's the purpose of coming together to share these stories, right? Not simply to hear sad stories of struggle and difficulties that people are facing, but to break down some of the tools that are used against us to keep us divided. When we share stories, we break down isolation. We break down individualism, right? Because everything about our society wants you to think that if you're struggling, it's your fault. You did something wrong, right? You didn't study hard enough. You didn't work hard enough. You didn't work enough jobs, right? But there are 140 million poor and working class people in this country. And Schenectady and Rotterdam are part of that, right? Our whole capital region, our whole state of New York, 8 million people in the state of New York are poor and low income, meaning if they're low income, one emergency away. That could mean your landlord decides to jack up the rent. It could mean your car breaks down. It could mean your job packs up and moves somewhere else, right? It's one emergency away and suddenly people are thrust into poverty. So when we share these stories, when we invite one another to share these stories, right, we're beginning to break that isolation, that individualism, and then we can start to strategize together about how we're going to change this system that is keeping us poor and divided and struggling. You with me? Right on. Cool. Right on. Well, I'm going to invite a couple friends up to give us a little bit of an overview and introduction and sort of big picture context beyond what I've just shared. And so first up, I'm going to invite Kate Breslin from the Schuyler Center.
Hey, thank you so much. Thank you so much for welcoming us here into this beautiful, warm space. I'm Kate Breslin. I'm the CEO of the Schuyler Center for Analysis and Advocacy. We are a 152-year-old nonprofit policy and advocacy organization based in Albany. And our work focuses on improving public systems to better support New Yorkers, especially focused on children, families, and people living in poverty. We're thrilled to be here in partnership today with the Rotterdam Community Center, the Alliance for a Hunger-Free New York, and the Labor Religion Coalition, and especially with all of you. We're looking forward to hearing from you all, grateful for your willingness to share stories and experiences, and Schuyler Center as a statewide organization is working with communities and community groups in different parts of the state to do similar kinds of things, to, as we heard, hear each other's stories and unite. It's really important that we hear stories and experiences to achieve meaningful change in systems and the policies that impact us every day. And in addition to stories, our organization, Schuyler Center, also believes in looking at the data. And so here's an example. We have the State of New York's Children Data Book. There's a few downstairs, and they're available on our website. I'm happy to hand this one up. But what that shows us is that hundreds of thousands of New York's children are living in poverty. And New York has a higher child poverty rate than many, 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 or most other states, despite the fact that we're one of the richest states in one of the richest countries in the world. So a little context at the state level. New York State enacted the Child Poverty Reduction Act more than 2 years ago. And it committed the state to reducing child poverty by 50% over 10 years. So we're 2 years into that timeline, and the state has a lot more work to do to reach that goal. The state has convened an advisory committee, the Child Poverty Reduction Advisory Council, which is charged with, among other things, making policy recommendations to help the state reach that goal. I want you to know that my organization and our team are here, and we're listening, and we're taking notes, and we're going to take what we learned tonight and compile it into a report, and then we will be marching it over to the Capitol and sharing it with the governor's office and with legislators, and many of the folks here tonight will be joining us, the Labor Religion Coalition, Alliance for a Hunger-Free New York, et cetera. We want to weigh in on how the state works to address child poverty. It is not going to be easy. Child poverty in New York State has been stuck for decades, in good economic times and in bad. It's not going to go away by trickling down or just because the economy gets better. So far, our policymakers are not regularly asking themselves how their decisions will change New York's poverty trajectory, and it's time for that to change. There's a proverb that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So let's do it together.
Next up, I'm going to invite Natasha Pernica from the Food Pantries of the Capital Region.
Hi, everybody. Thanks. Can you hear me okay? So I'm Natasha. I'm the executive director of the Food Pantries for the Capital District. We work with 70 food pantries in the area. Just here in Albany, Rensselaer, Saratoga, Schenectady County, there's 70,000 people who rely on food pantries. Sometimes people turn to a food pantry once a year, and there are other people who have to go to pantries once a week in order to have enough food to eat. And we're talking about a movement, right? We're talking about raising our voices because we're more than just numbers. We're people, and we're people that count, and we're people that don't have major corporations paying fancy lobbyists to make our public representatives do things for us. And that's why our voices have to be loud and united together in a movement. And I do believe that system change is possible. And I'll just give you a small example from my own life. When I was in college, my grandparents were living on an extremely limited income. My grandpa was a union carpenter in Chicago back in the day, but he had been retired for many, many years, and it was hard for my grandparents to stretch their dollars. And this was, I don't know, 25, 30 years ago. And at that time, our food bank and food pantry system was kind of like, you get what you get. It was the government food, right? We were getting the cheese blocks, and I was in college, so my grandparents were sharing what they got with me because I was a poor college student. And I didn't know what to do with all the things that we got. We got canned salmon. I had never, I didn't know what to do with canned salmon, but I learned how to make salmon cakes, right? You kind of make do with what you have. But, you know, I started at the food pantries for the Capital District 13 years ago. And when I started the food pantries, still, you know, very few pantries gave out fresh produce. Most pantries were like, oh, people aren't going to cook, people don't know, people don't want it, people don't want to use it. And it just wasn't the case. And the food pantries for the Capital District did a survey of guests who went to food pantries, and we asked them, what do you want? What do you want more of? You know, why do you come to a food pantry? Tell us your story. And what we learned is that the things that people wanted most was meat. Meat's expensive, dairy, and fresh fruits and vegetables. And now, 13 years later, most food pantries in our coalition provide fresh fruits and vegetables and meats and dairy. And this happened over a decade. And it took time, and it took money. It took, you know, here in New York State, it took the state to provide resources to help food banks and food pantries purchase fresh produce, because it's expensive. It's expensive for all of us. It's expensive for food pantries, too, to buy. But that's just one example about like the optimism that working together and hearing the voices of positive things that can happen from that. And unfortunately, far too many people have to turn to food pantries. We believe very strongly that everybody deserves a right for the resources and the access to healthy food consistently, so that people don't have to go to a food pantry if they don't want to. You can go to a grocery store. And so there's a lot of work to be done. But again, that's where bringing our voices together so that they match, they say, here's the numbers. Schuyler Center has a lot of numbers. The food pantries has a lot of numbers. But we need our public representatives to know these are real people in our community, your neighbors, people work in your doctor's office, people working in the schools. These are real people that deserve the right to food. And not only do we run the food pantries for the Capital District, but we also run the Alliance for a Hunger-Free New York, which is now a statewide organization of food pantries. I totally went off script. Where's Peyton? Peyton put this together for me, so now I'm going to look at it. Thanks, Peyton. But I'll also add some numbers to it. It was reported recently in Newsweek that 1 in 4 Americans struggled to afford food over the past year. It was like 44 million Americans, 1 in 4 people. So this is not a failure of an individual to work hard or try their best. This is a systemic failure if 1 in 4 Americans. In food insecurity in New York State is growing. In a recent poll, 43% of New Yorkers said they'd experienced signs of food insecurity. Food insecurity is like when we talk about hunger, food insecurity means that you don't have the access to or resources for enough healthy food. So that's what I mean when I say food insecurity. So 43% of New Yorkers said they experienced signs of food insecurity because of the cost and are eating poor quality or limiting the amount of food. And we know that parents feed their kids first, and so they're often going without. So again, I know I am stopping. I can follow directions. So thank you everyone for showing up and being brave, and I am following directions. But thanks for having me. Thank you, everybody.
For folks in the back, Leah up here is being a tremendous timekeeper for us. And the thing is, I mean, there's so many folks, every single person here could share a story, could share an experience. We're not going to keep us here all night. And here's the thing. Here's how we're gonna do this. We've got 7 folks who are going to share their personal testimonies, experiences, things that they see in their communities. But that's not the only way, right? Coming up here is not the only way that we want to gather your story. So as you've heard, if you were here for our meal when Dustin was giving announcements, we were collecting surveys You should have hopefully got one on the way in. If not, they're in the back behind the sound booth there. You can grab one of those and fill it out and leave it with us before you leave. Also, Nicholson, you want to stand up real quick? Nicholson in the Jurassic Park shirt will be in the office, which is directly back and to your right, probably midway through to the end and after this event. If you want to give a video testimony and share your story, share your experiences, he'll record that and we'll incorporate that into the report that is going to come out of this event and into our organizing work going forward. I also want to point out one other thing that you may have noticed when you came in. My friend Julia is in the back here, and hi, Julia. Julia is creating an artistic expression of the things that she's hearing from our speakers, right? So at the end of this event, there's going to be this awesome canvas that reflects the themes and the experiences shared at this event. After the event, please go up and talk with her. Add more. She'll want to hear from you and continue building this. Folks up front are not the only contributors to this. All right? So with that said, we're going to get right into it. And I would like to invite my friend Robin King to come up and share.
I got a fan in the back row, okay. Hi, I'm Robin King. I am the Director of Wellness and Support Services at SUNY Schenectady. That's a fancy name for this person who oversees the food pantry, counseling center, and the resource hub. My story isn't special, but it's mine, and it got me where I am today. So very briefly, I'll give you a little bit of what I've been through. When I was growing up as a kid, we always had trouble with keeping food in the house. There were 4 of us. Both of my parents worked back in the 60s and 70s when mothers didn't generally work outside the home. But both my parents worked, and like you, Natasha, we got the blocks of cheese, we got the cans of peanut butter, and that's how my parents helped to feed us. And it was literally feast to famine, okay? On payday, we ate pretty well. 3 days before payday, we were eating bread and milk for dinner, okay? But I got married. I had 2 children. There was not a problem with food then. But then I became a single parent at the age of 22, and then I was plunged back into poverty, and we were food insecure again. I was on food stamps. I fed my kids first. And I tell one story that, and this was a turning point for me. One Saturday, the only thing I had to give my kids was 2 packages of ramen noodles. And I made those 2 packages, I gave them the noodles, and I drank the broth, and that's what I had to eat that day, and that's what they had to eat that day. And I knew that working at McDonald's on Altamont Avenue, making minimum wage was not going to get me where I needed to go and not going to make my life better. So I went to college. I went to Schenectady County Community College. I started at the age of 29, and I can tell you that getting an education changed the course of my life. And it's only because of that. It opened doors for me that I would not have otherwise had open for me. And because I had that experience, and because I know the power of an education, I now work at SUNY Schenectady so that I can provide that hope for other people. Our food pantry's been in operation since 2017 through the generous seed money from the Schenectady Foundation and the help of the nice folks at Cornell Cooperative Extension to help me put shelves together. We got started in a very small room, and in 3 months we outgrew because the need on campus was so overwhelming. Ramen noodles and 5 boxes of mac and cheese for $1 is not a rite of passage for college students. It's a real struggle, and they still struggle. I can tell you that I just did, I analyzed some data the past 5 semesters. Of all of the pantry visitors that we've had over those past 5 semesters, 85% of them have either registered for the next semester or they graduated, which is in our mission statement. We wanted to provide this so it would lower an obstacle for them to get to their goal, so that they could go out and make a living wage and not have to be where they are. They can have something more. and that 85% is compared to the college overall, which is only 69%. So while that's not causation, but there is a correlation. And I recently had a student fill out a survey, and she's graduating next month. She's going to University at Albany. And she, on her survey, we ask, you know, how did this impact you? She said, because I was able to visit the food pantry 3 times a month while I was a student here, I didn't have to get a 3rd job. And I was able to use the money that I had for my 2 jobs on other things. That's success in my book, okay? So again, my story isn't special, but it's one of hope, and I will encourage anybody who really has the desire to get an education to do so, and our food pantry will help them meet those goals. Thanks very much. Thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Robin. Next up, I'd like to invite Dr. Sahib. You want to come up and share with us? Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you, Joe. I think I share the same story. The only difference is I'm taller. I'm going to look this way so I don't look at the timing and I don't feel guilty. You know, any preacher will tell you when you say 4 minutes, it's an hour and 4 minutes, so bear with me. One thing actually I would request an amendment to that song. I don't think we're going to write it, we're going to make it right again. I think we're going to make it right then, because I don't think it has ever been right. You know, I'm going to introduce myself, and I want you to keep this in mind just to show you how powerful poor people can be. I carry the title doctor. I have a PhD in international business. I am a faith leader. I'm a community leader. I'm a school principal. I'm a college professor. I'm a motivational speaker. I'm a fundraiser. I'm a liaison, a community liaison with Hudson Valley Community College and the Muslim community. I'm a counselor. I'm an advisor for the Muslim student associations around the Capital region. Now, I think I'm leaving. I'm a father of 4. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because I want to share with you my story and then my experience right now. When I was 19, I was known as the Cookie Monster because cookies gave you energy, and I didn't have enough money to feed myself. I had a full-time job, and I wanted to continue my education, so there was no compromise. So, but for me to do that and only do 1 job, I had to compromise. So I couldn't eat regular meals. And it's funny, the reason my friends call me Cookie Monster, because whenever they visit the 1 room that I rented, what did I have to offer? Cookies. Because that's what made sense. And I worked at Burger King, and guess what? The days that I worked, I had a good meal. I took student loans to make sure that I pay for whatever expenses that I couldn't cover with my job. Guess what? I'm still stuck with those student loans because they never go away. They don't tell you about that, right? They tell you what you qualify for. Here's the grant, but here's a student loan. Please take it all, and you take it, and you're stuck with it, okay? But I made it. But, you know, that was easy when I was single. But as a father of 2, when I had to go to the food pantry, that was the most humiliating thing. Because I can tell you, we're talking about child poverty. But when your kids want specific things, and you're only being offered things that you don't need, and your children, they're not going to ask you, why couldn't you provide? And I was still, again, I have a PhD, so I didn't stop at, you know, a bachelor's. So, and I was actually also working as a college professor part-time, because a lot of people think, oh, you're working at SUNY Albany or Hudson Valley or Union, you're making a lot of money. No, you're not. As a part-time adjunct faculty, you're not. And I worked at a pizza place. That was a real struggle, okay? And I think this is one of the reasons now I push my kids at a very young age to actually go to college. My son is 15, he's in college. I'm like, no, you're not gonna go through what I had to go through. And I think this is my trauma. Now I'm realizing I kind of like push that on him. It breaks my heart because we are traumatized. You know, at times you're almost convinced that you're a loser. And you have to convince the world that I'm worthy of what I deserve. And that breaks my heart. Now you think that changed? No, it didn't change. As a school principal, I deal with children, parents, and my staff who are struggling with the fact that they have to put food on the table. You know, as an educator, they tell you, make sure that the kids are fed in the morning. Fed with what when the parents cannot provide? You know, they tell you teachers need to focus what they can focus when they're sitting in my office and telling me we cannot afford rent, we're struggling. When you literally, as myself, I go and hide and actually put a bag of grocery at somebody's door because I want to preserve their dignity. Nothing has changed. Maybe I have pulled myself out and I'm telling you, why am I looking at her? Right? We have a long way to go. It really breaks my heart that, you know, we're standing here and find the same struggle. And a lot of people look at me and say, well, you pulled yourself out. I'm probably one out of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands who actually was able to make it, and I'm stuck with the loans. And a lot of people are still left behind. So this is one of the main reasons I decided to actually start engaging more in advocacy work. And that's something that I'm passionate about. And we have to advocate not only to provide for these guys, but actually to preserve their dignity. I think each and every one of us, you know and you understand what it means to really be humiliated as you're trying to provide for your kids, as you're trying to provide. Sorry. So there's a lot to be done. And it's an honor to be here. Even though I do have to run after the program, you know, Reverend Dustin, Amari, and Reverend West, they do have my contact if anyone wants to reach out. That's what I'm committing my life for, to make sure that we all are in this together, because we want to go far. We do not want to go fast. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Next up, I want to invite my friend Glenda Brooks-Woodson to come on up. Hey, you said you wanted to go third, specifically.
I don't know. Every time I come up front, I get nervous. But I like to be in the background. I like to help. No, I don't want to. So, you know, I was sitting here listening to everybody's story, and we got a lot in common, y'all. We got so much in common. You know, I was thinking about back to when I was a kid. I was on some of them lines, too. Them cheese lines, those milk, pork in the can. Oh, my goodness. Peanut butter, but I still love peanut butter and jelly sandwiches to this day. I've really been thinking about the fact that I've been on my own since I was 15 years old, and I'm 66 years old today, and I am definitely a living, breathing, walking testimony. Especially when I was younger, I spent plenty of days with no food to eat because I made a stupid decision. At least that's how I felt at that age, because I had a home, but I wasn't satisfied with that. I couldn't wait to grow up, but I grew up too fast and too soon and didn't have a clue. So I spent plenty of days out there hungry, especially when I came out, because I was like 15, couldn't get on welfare because I was too young. I was also pregnant, and my baby's father wasn't there to help me. So I spent plenty of days hungry. I had to do things that I did not want to do, that I'm not proud of, that I was ashamed of to do, but I had to survive. I had to live, and I wanted my baby to survive too, although my baby did not. So I'm here as an advocate. I joined the advocacy in August when they had just got started. I don't believe in incidents, coincidence. I believe that it was meant to be. I am honored and privileged to be on this Schenectady County Food Council. We're starting out small, but we've already made some big strides, and I'm proud to be a part of that. I probably should have, I guess I went off script too. But again, sitting here listening to these other stories, there ain't really nothing that I really could say that's any different than anybody else's, except that we're here today. Don't despise small beginnings, because at least we're beginning and we're doing it. I also want to say that we can and we will and we are making a difference, because everybody matters. Everybody matters, from the top to the bottom to the in-between. We all matter. And that's why we're here, to make sure that the higher uppers hear and understand that we're here to make a difference, and we're here to be a voice, and we will not be silent by any means necessary. We're going to continue moving forward. Thank you for letting me be here.
Thank you so much, Glenda. I told you to remember that song, and he just told us to change the words, so I think we're going to do that. We're just going to do a couple verses, but we'll change it. Rather than we're going to set it right again, let's be a little optimistic. We're going to set it right today, because that's what we're doing here. Even by starting this organizing, by getting together, by getting connected with one another, we're going to start setting it right today. Trouble been brewing too many years. We're gonna set it right today. Trouble been brewing too many years. We're gonna set it right today. Trouble been brewing too many years.
We're gonna set it right today.
We're gonna set it right. Set it right today. We're building a movement across the land. We're gonna set it right today. We're building a movement across the land. We're gonna set it right today. We're building a movement across the land. We're gonna set it right today. We're gonna set it right today. All right, we got a few more speakers. My friend Melissa Anderson is up next.
Maybe you should have put us in order from height, so we didn't have to go up and down. My name is Melissa. I am a mom of twin boys, age 11. So my story is similar and different to everybody else's. I grew up poor. We had a farm. We had a garden. My dad hunted. We tried to supplement the box cheese and everything else. My mom, after my dad had a heart attack, and we couldn't get a whole lot of help because he had owned his own business, which was just starting to get in the black. We went on assistance. My mom got shamed at the grocery store with the paper food stamps. She never went back on them. She never used them again. So I grew up knowing that I had to work hard. I had to figure out a way to make things work, and I did everything I was supposed to do. We were encouraged to go to college. We took out the loans. We got the grants. We were the first ones in our family to go to a 4-year degree. Then I got my master's. I worked my way through college, got my master's while working full-time, got a great job, moved to this area for that job, and 10 years ago I got downsized after having kids. So now here I am, a mom, with 2-year-old twin boys who are incidentally allergic to wheat and dairy, so that makes food pantries harder. The coupons for free milk don't cover almond milk. Went through all the hoops, got on food stamps, was able to make it off of that for a while till I finally found a job because my job had been so specific. It was really hard to find something after that. And a lot of places, like I'm the kind of person, if I have to go work at McDonald's, I will. I'll work a factory job, what have you. But finding a job that worked with the daycare that was available was impossible. So I finally found a job after 3 years. Used up all my savings, all my retirement. I eventually went bankrupt. Got a job making a little over minimum wage, and that's great, right? No, because my food stamps went to $28 a month. Do you know how many loaves of gluten-free bread that buys? 3. And the loaves are about this big, the bread's about that big. So feed 2-year-old boys a sandwich with that and see how far you get. But I'm making it work. And then they age out of Head Start, and now I have to pay for aftercare. Aftercare is $350 a month for 2 children for after school, and that doesn't count vacations. That doesn't count half days. Those are extra. And now I'm working, the job that I found was in Albany. So now I'm paying for a commute. It takes longer to get there and to get back, so I have to arrange for childcare before school as well as for after school. That's another $150 a month for before care. Then I got a raise, 25 cents an hour. And I fell off the cliff. Everybody here probably knows that cliff, right? 25 cents more an hour, I lost that $28 a month. Now, it wasn't about the $28 a month, because as we know, that's not going very far. But now my kids are not eligible for free lunch at school. So now that's $60 a week to feed my kids. Even though it's a low price at school, it's $60 a week now in addition that I have to pay. Insurance, now I also have to pay. The daycare costs are there. So now I got 25 cents more an hour, and I'm spending about $150 more to $300 more a month. So that 25 cents did not cover that. And for everybody who likes to talk about, oh, everybody's taking advantage of the system, or why don't they just go and get on food stamps, or why don't they just go to the food pantry? Well, I couldn't go to the food pantry, even for the food that my kids could eat, because the food pantries were closed by the time I got back through traffic from Albany to here. It's not as easy as people think, and that cliff is there, and that's what traps so many people. You get a little further, and then you only can make it work for so long, and then you fall off, and then you have to start all over. So you can do everything right and still end up where we are, and we do feed our kids first, and we do everything we can, and we choose whether to pay rent or pay for the medicine that you need or pay for your kids to have enough food to get through the week. So we have to do something, and I hope that I can help in some small way to help bring more awareness to this and to get things working the way they should be working. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Next up, I want to invite my friend Helen Moss to come up.
My story is like everybody else's too. But Melissa, mine was the bridge. And I didn't care if it was water or rocks on the bottom of it. I'm a good swimmer, so let's go with the rocks. You know, but I'm 52 years old, and I work for the state. I'm in the school system. And about a year ago, I just couldn't take it anymore. I've had some medical issues, and I still got full pay. I saved all my time up and did the right thing. But I just don't make enough in order to pay for the gas to get to work or to eat dinner. And the ramen noodle thing, sometimes you put a little hot sauce in it, it's not so bad, but that's what I take for lunch, you know? And, he just did it the way it had what I had to do. I don't have children. I couldn't imagine that. That would be hard, I have to say. I have a dog that eats like 3 children, but he's a lab, and but everything was very difficult about a year ago. And if it wasn't for the pantry, I wouldn't have put on weight, which I'm not sure if I thank you for that or but I eat healthier. I eat my fruit and vegetables, which I didn't do before. Ramen noodles was my friend. That was the thing. I take it to work and try to put something in it and make us better, but that's what I had to do. And, I've been at my job for 17 years, In fact, I just had an evaluation and it was great today, but it's just what it is and how much I get paid for my position. I would never ask for more money necessarily, but everything is just so expensive. And my car is paid off, my 2012, which I still owe for the brakes that just got done, So I went to college. I didn't grow up poor. Every once in a while my dad would get laid off, and yeah, we had to struggle at that moment, but it wasn't a thing that was always. It wasn't, But the past year, it's just, it has gone downhill. Things, you know? Everything's so expensive. You can't really afford everything. So sometimes you have to choose gas or dinner, you know? I always chose the gas to get to work, to do it all over again, you know? So, that's my story. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Next up, I want to invite my friend Janice Walls.
Well, everybody said everything, so I'm going to go sit down. But no, because Reverend Dr. William Barber, some of us have heard him in a recent talk, when he was talking about the creation of Poor People's Campaign 5-6 years ago to reorganize it, he said, we never built it to be quiet. So our voices must be heard. And whether we are saying the same story slightly differently, it is the same story in the richest country around the world, in one of the richest states. How can we possibly have this level of poverty? How can we possibly have more and more people come to the food pantry? My husband and I have volunteered at Sycamore Collaborative. I almost have the new name in my head, for years. And I've started to do intakes, so I get a chance to see people now that I've known for 12 years. And I've seen people, and I talk with them a little bit, they talk with me. And these are people that are working 2 and 3 jobs. And you hear that. I have to hurry up and get my food so I can go to work. So as was mentioned, people who think, oh, everyone is just sitting around on the couch watching television all day. Oh, yes, I'll go get food stamps and I'll go to the pantry. You know, look at the information, people. So I was going to tell you about my mother. But before I do that, in today's Gazette, there was a columnist, Stephen L. Carter, and he said, he was talking about the Gaza protesters, but he said, and I understand the heartfelt need at times to shout one's agony to the uncaring world. And look how long people have been putting up with this. My story is from when I was young, and being blah, 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 years old, it was a long time ago. But it was the same for my divorced mother raising 5 kids. And so, yes, we had the condiment sandwiches on white bread. You know, ketchup and mustard and mayonnaise. That's what we brought to school. We also had the outfits from City Mission and Salvation Army. And in fact, my sister, who's 7 years younger than I, when Mother's poverty level became even higher, she said, oh, you got a whole outfit. I got a blouse and Mom made me a skirt from some other material. My mother also, a woman who had skills. She was a stenographer. She worked full-time all the time. When I was a teenager, my mother said to me in the middle of the night, Janice, get everybody up, give them a paper bag, plastic bag, and have them put their things in it and put it in the car. We did. We were kids. As an adult, it finally came through to my thick skull that, oh my gosh, she'd lost the house. And as happens to many people, we were talking about school grants. There's also predatory loan people out there who would just love to take your money with interests that are very, very high. My mother suffered with that the whole life because she was trying to make a life for us. So in the middle of the night, we left that house. And again, thinking of it, we only took our clothes, no furniture, nothing. We went to where my dad was living and dropped off the two smallest, youngest kids. And then we drove to where her home was in Malden, Mass, and she still had a friend. We had to drop off the other kids because the friend only had room for two kids, myself and my brother. And isn't that what happens? The grandparents end up raising the kids. So my story, like everyone else's story, is about lacks. Lack of food, lack of solid homes. Like several of you here, we were lucky enough. Our parents pushed us to go to college, and my story has stabilized and been wonderful with my wonderful husband all these years. But as someone who goes to church, I know Jesus tells us, as do other gods and spirits, take care of your people, feed your sheep, clothe your lambs. And we should shout, "Here I am, Lord. It is I, Lord. I have heard you calling in the night." And all of us should stand up and say, we are here to stop these problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Janice. One final testifier for this portion of the program. Again, as I mentioned earlier, there's other ways that we want you to share your story. I'll go over those again before we close. But you've already met her, my friend Bevan Francis.
Hi, everybody. My name is Bevan, proud member of the Poor People's Campaign, activist and advocate in Albany. 43 years I've been on this planet, and I have never gotten myself lifted above that poverty line. I am still there. I'm going to first tell you about the first 25 years of my life. I was born into extreme poverty to parents that used drugs. Life was chaotic and difficult. My mom worked 2 jobs just to pay rent, household needs, soap, garbage bags, that kind of stuff. My dad, who sat on the couch, was still too very proud for us to go and apply for food stamps or things like that. So we lived off my mom's work, and we had 1 meal a day, dinner. There was no breakfast, there was no lunch. In the summertime, schools didn't have breakfast programs in those days. So dinner. And no matter what that dinner was, we devoured it because we were hungry. And summers were really hard without lunch program. Just find a friend's house. Are you cooking grilled cheese in there? And so we struggled with that, and there was 3 of us. And by the time I hit middle school, just the chaotic life that I lived in, being hungry. We never went to the doctor. We never went to the dentist. So I had a lot of health issues, mental health issues. My dad was extremely violent, so domestic violence issues. And I started messing up at school. And I wouldn't show up on time because I couldn't get up in the morning. And I was the oldest, so I was the caretaker for my younger siblings. So I had to leave school at 2 p.m. no matter what to get my brother and sister out at the elementary school. So I would come in late, and they would hit me with detentions, and then I would have to leave the detention early. Then they would hit me with in-school suspension, and I would have to leave in-school suspension early. Then they would hit me with expelling. And this continued for about a year until they finally hit me with a PINS petition, which is a person in need of supervision. Nobody ever asked me why I was coming to school late. Nobody ever asked me why I was falling asleep in class. Nobody asked me why I couldn't focus. Nobody asked me why I went to the nurse's office every day crying with a stomach ache. They just sent me off to a detention center. I navigated that quite well, I say. The judge told me he was going to send me to the detention center 3 months. When I came back in front of him, if I had been well behaved he would let me go on probation. If I was not well behaved, I was going to Tryon for the next 4 years, which was a maximum security facility. So I was very well behaved. And after those 3 months, I was released on probation. And what I came home to was my mother left. She moved out. And it was just me and my father. And my mother said, hey, you can come with us, but the man that she left with was a sexual predator. So I chose to stay with my dad. He was safer. And about the age 14 or 15, my dad went to jail because he assaulted me. And it was like so bad that the police came and the ambulance came and he went to jail, and now I was on my own. And the court was looking at putting me in foster care. And I said, I've always been an advocate for myself, and I said, I can do this on my own, emancipate me. So my probation officer assisted me, and I fought for emancipation and got it. And I started working. Started working at Price Chopper bagging groceries for $4.05 an hour, and I sold drugs to make ends meet. And I did that from about 14 to about 20 years old. And at 22, I went and got my GED. I stopped messing around with all the illegal activities, and I went to EOC, where I graduated with a 4.0 and was ready to start building my education career when I had my first of 6 back surgeries. Because of the long-term health issues that I acquired, and living in poverty, living on the street, living hard, my body started breaking down at 25 years old. And so I've been on Social Security disability since 25 years old. So I haven't had a dentist or eye care since I was 25 years old. And like we're talking about, you get a little, they take a little. Every year they raise my cost of living amount, they take more Medicare, less food stamps I get. So the system is built against us, and I still haven't gotten myself above that line, but I stand out here and I tell my story so that people realize that that we needed a change. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ben. And thank you, everybody, all of our testifiers this evening. I want to just take a moment for all of us to think. You can close your eyes if you're comfortable doing that. Reflect on what you've heard. Think about the different stories that were shared, the different perspectives, positioning. We heard from folks in several different stages and positions of life. And yet there's resonance. Their stories rhymed. We're all looking at the same problem, the same systemic crises. And yeah, everyone's story is a bit different. But the commonalities, that's what's going to bring us together. We can foreground that and build strength through that. So, almost lastly, I'm going to invite the Executive Director of the Labor Religion Coalition, Reverend Wes McNeil, and the Executive Director of the Sycamore Collaborative, Reverend Amari Tanyan Santos, to come up and share a little bit about what some next steps might look like.
I think I'm starting with what I think I heard, and Wes will end with some of these steps ahead. And I decided to collect some of the thoughts in 2 major themes. One is who is in the room. I thought that was interesting to observe it for us. And 2, some of the themes that were weaved this evening for us in the testimonies. Who's in the room? I thought it was interesting, right? You know, persons with lived experience of poverty and/or food access, Schenectady-based and community-engaged organizations and some of their leaders, faith leaders, people of faith and people of goodwill, regional and statewide organizations providing services and encouraging food access and advocacy at local, state, and national spaces. There are food for-profit entrepreneurs and leaders also in this room, because the food access system is wider than simply the not-for-profit experience that many of us lead. And there are also county and state political leaders in our midst. I think there were 5 themes that have been weaved with the stories that we heard. The first one is that the telling of our stories as the beginning of organizing and impacting systems of marginalization and disenfranchisement, especially stories around poverty. And I noticed that the stories of experience with poverty is a common story. And I began to ask myself, how can many of us continue to ignore the realities of poverty around us? And I think we should all come to the realization that ignoring the reality of poverty is both a social and political choice. The second theme is definitions of poverty that we heard. Being one emergency away from being thrusted into a situation of need, knowing that minimum wage is not a living wage and that is a policy choice. Experiencing poverty is experiencing trauma and humiliation. And many people who live in or around poverty are working people, often working more than one job. The third theme is a theme of legislation, right? We heard earlier that at all levels of government, legislators might not be or are not thinking how policies are affecting and perpetrating systemic poverty, right? What is the work to be done with local, regional, and state governments to inform and influence policy? What are the stories and the data that can move policymakers to inform legislation to lift people, especially children and the elderly, out of poverty? And we have experienced recently in some of those policies. How is it that the social safety net policies are not catching up to the hurdles many have to jump through and to barely make ends meet? The fourth theme is that food insecurity and poverty is a generational story. The commonality of the stories of poverty has been lived through generations. What are the systems that are in place, both policy and social, that causes our young people to stumble into poverty at the prime of their creative, idealist, energetic selves again and again? And the fifth theme is that food insecurity, not having enough sources to acquire enough healthy food options, are lived in manifold ways. Having access to food frees brain space and often money space to invest in one's hopes and aspirations. Having access to food, especially nutritious and culturally responsive food, impacts the ability of children and youth to be present, to learn, and to engage in social interaction, and the ability of adults to be productive not only in work, but also in civic commitment and engagement. Providing access to food is not about sharing stuff to eat, but about providing high-quality food that can improve health and mental well-being, and culturally responsive food, because food doesn't only nourishes the body, it also nourishes the soul. The stories of food insecurity are the stories of the intersection of the manifold incidences of poverty. The story of food insecurity and poverty are also stories of violence. The stories of food insecurity and poverty are stories of the journey through disempowerment. People did not choose to do this. People were led into disempowerment. The telling of the stories of food insecurity and poverty are filled also with the hope that it can and should be different. Hopefully for them, but definitely for the generations to come. Thank you.
That's right. I'm Reverend Wes McNeil with the Labor Religion Coalition, and also want to first reflect back a little bit some of what we heard here. And I'm reminded again that today, as we heard at the beginning, is May Day, a day where we, around the world, celebrate the movement of workers for rights. And we have heard a lot about work here, both the kind of work that you sell your labor for, the work that pays wages, and the work of caring for children and for parents and for our community. And it's all work that is necessary and life-giving, and yet is not valued by our society in the way that it needs to be. And alongside the stories that we've heard tonight, we also know that we are in a state, in a country with unheard of levels of wealth in human history. I don't know what the number is exactly today, but it's something like 120 or so billionaires live in New York State. They hold wealth that is, a couple times the amount of our entire state budget. And so none of this is a question of scarcity. It's a question of choices. And it's really striking to me hearing folks talk about all the barriers that come up when you're trying to do what people said was the right thing, or do what we've been told leads to a secure life. All these barriers come up. And it's a system that is set up as though the thing that we have to guard against is someone like Bevan feeling comfortable. Someone like Robin or Melissa being able to take a breath and maybe not have to worry about where the next meal is coming from. Why is that the thing that we have to guard against? I think what we have to guard against is people's kids growing up and seeing their parent go hungry so that they can have something to eat. It doesn't have to be this way. And so while we are here among folks who are doing important, creative, courageous work of feeding each other, that work has to happen and is necessary and life-giving, and we have to put our all into it. And we have to remember that it doesn't really have to be this way. The student who could use a food pantry to only work 2 jobs in addition to going to school, what if somebody could go to school and just focus on going to school? We create enough in this world that we don't need everybody burning the candle at both ends. We don't need to live in a society like that. But it starts with all of us, I think, reminding ourselves of that. I think Sahib said something about having to convince the world I'm worthy of the things I deserve. So many of us spend a lot of our time and energy feeling like we have to convince ourselves and the world of that. And so one of the things I think is really powerful about being in these spaces together is recognizing that we're telling a lot of the same stories, reminding ourselves that we actually deserve to have enough to eat. We deserve to spend time with our kids. We deserve to not wake up in the middle of the night wondering how we're going to pay the rent. It does not have to be like this. And so we have a lot of work ahead of us, right? There's no one policy that has to change to fix child poverty or to fix hunger. It's a whole system that has to change and a whole orientation. So we are not guarding against, this idea that somebody's going to be too lazy when eat too many blocks of cheese. That's not the problem that we're facing. The problem that we're facing is a few people are holding on to a whole lot and making it impossible for anybody else to have a decent life. That's the problem. And how are we going to fix it? It's coming together, lifting up our stories. And I want to remind folks that those surveys we had on the tables are still there. I think folks will still be hanging around to take video testimonies. But this isn't going to end now. Go home. Who else in your life has a story to tell? Can you help kind of make space for them to tell their story by sharing what you heard or what you're going through? Remind people that we're not alone. This isn't something to be ashamed about. It's something that our society should be ashamed about. So that's one step is tell these stories. We have to destigmatize the struggles that we are going through and keep helping this process. We heard about the Child Poverty Reduction Advisory Council, so there's a very concrete process happening that we can be contributing to, and it's bigger than that. It's about changing a narrative and bringing lots more people into ongoing policy struggles. We had Assemblymember Angela Santa Barbara here earlier. We need to make sure that our local and state elected officials are hearing these stories, not once a year, but all the time. And know that it's not just me going to say hello, but it's me and 100, 200, 300 people who are all paying attention and all making the same demands. And that's part of what the work of the groups represented here is about, to be collecting a lot of voices under clear demands that we're bringing to our officials, so they have to listen to us. Folks here might have heard already of the Community Advocates Program that Joe is leading, and there are going to be additional opportunities for people to continue telling our stories and engaging in the advocacy process. Folks have also heard a few different mentions of the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, and that's one kind of umbrella of work that folks can get plugged into. If you registered and you signed in tonight, which hopefully everybody did, we're going to keep in touch, the different groups that are part of this tonight. We're going to keep in touch with you to invite you to keep participating in things, so you'll hear some of this information. There's a couple things with the Poor People's Campaign coming up. There is a Waking the Sleeping Giant online program to kind of learn more about the work in New York State on May 9th. And there is a big mobilization to DC June 29th with folks from around the country who are struggling around some of these same issues. Keep in touch, or we'll keep you informed about that going forward. But keep telling your story, keep organizing, bring more people in, and together we can change the system that we're in. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to read a quote from Dr. King, and then we're going to close with one more song. This is from a series of lectures Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King gave at the end of his life. He didn't know it was the end of his life, but early 1968, I believe, the Massey lectures. You can find recordings of these online, and it's pretty cool because it was a radio program, the audio quality is really high, and so you can actually hear the timbre of his voice in a deeper way than maybe some of the clips that get passed around from some of the more famous speeches. But he said this was at the launch of the original Poor People's Campaign, which we are trying to carry forward today. He said, "The dispossessed of this nation, the poor, both white and Negro, live in a cruelly unjust society. They must organize a revolution against that injustice, not against the lives of the persons who are their fellow citizens, but against the structures through which society is refusing to take means which have been called for and which are at hand to lift the load of poverty. The only real revolutionary, people say, is someone who has nothing to lose. There are millions of poor people in this country who have very little or even nothing to lose. If they can be helped to take action together, they will do so with a freedom and a power that will be a new and unsettling force in our complacent national life. If they can be helped to take action together. That is not a charity. That is not a hand down, right? Taking action together is a very specific kind of help that we all need. When I talked at the beginning about breaking individualism, breaking isolation, that is the task of organizing. And this sharing of stories this evening is a major step forward in that process of organizing. So we're going to close with a song because, as was mentioned, the reason we are poor is because some folks are hoarding all of the wealth, right? There are people who are on a maniacal quest to become the first trillionaire in global history, and meanwhile, we hear stories like tonight, millions struggling, right? So this song is called Rich Man's House. Bevan, do you want to teach it?
Yeah. So we're going to say, I went down to the rich man's house to take back what he stole from me, to take back my dignity, to take back my humanity. And then we repeat that verse again. And then we finish the verse with, now he's under my feet. Now he's under my feet. He's under my feet. And we ain't going to let no system walk all over me. Did I say that right?
Yeah, you got it. All right. Folks, I invite you, if you can, if you're able, please stand and join us. Again, this is one of those songs. You'll pick it up pretty quick. We'll sing a couple verses through.
You ready?
Yeah.
I went down to the rich man's house. And I took back what he stole from me. I took back my dignity. I took back my humanity. Well, I went down to the rich man's house and I took back what he stole from me. I took back my dignity. Took back my humanity. Now he's under my feet. It's under my feet. It's under my feet. It's under my feet. Ain't gonna let no system walk all over me. We're gonna go down to City Hall, I think. Here we go. Well, I went down to City Hall and I took back what they stole from me. I took back my dignity. I took back my humanity. Well, I went down to City Hall and I took back what they stole from me. I took back my dignity. I took back my humanity. And now he's under my feet. Where? Under my feet. Where? Under my feet. Yes, it's under my feet. Ain't gonna let no system walk all over me. What do you think? Should we take this one? Capitol.
Yeah, let's go down to the Capitol. Well, I went down to the Capitol and I took back what they stole from me. I took back my dignity. I took back my humanity. Well, I went down to the Capitol and I took back what they stole from me. I took back my dignity. I took back my humanity. And now it's under my feet. Where? Under my feet. Where? Under my feet. Where? Under my feet. Ain't gonna let no system walk all over me. We'll sing that last line one more time. Here we go. Ain't gonna let no system walk all over me. All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you to all of our speakers. Again, if you have not, please fill out a survey. Dustin's got an announcement. You can come on up. And then Nicholson will be in the back. If you want to give a video interview, talk to Nicholson before you leave. I promise it won't take very long. You'll look good on camera. It'll be great. Dustin, final announcement.
Yes, final announcement. So there was some really good food from Pareca's, right? Yeah. So and many thanks to the Schuyler Center for supporting this work. But there's a lot more of it. And so you're going to have to take that home. And so there is lots of leftover, I believe, boxes out by the food where it was. Please take that food home. Oh, my goodness, that chicken parm. That was something else. And thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight at the Rotterdam Community Center. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.